Hello and welcome to this video on how to approach two-part questions essay effectively in IELTS Writing Task 2. In this video, I'll explain what two-part question essays are, how to analyze them, how to come up with answers, and how to write them. At the end of this video, you should write an essay on the topic that your teacher will provide, and then you can get feedback on your writing. We will also look at a writing by a student and give feedback on it so that you can see what areas you need to focus on more. IELTS Writing Task 2 has a lot of two-part questions that can be hard to answer if you don't know what to do. Most of the time, they will ask you to talk about two different parts of a topic. Take this question as an example. Some parents buy their children whatever they ask for and allow their children to do whatever they want. Is this a good way to raise children? What consequences could this style of parenting have for children as they get older? Now, in this case, the two parts of the question are, is this a good way to raise children? And what consequences could this style of parenting have for children as they get older? Another example. In education and employment, some people work harder than others. Why do some people work harder? Is it always a good thing to work hard? Now, here you have the two questions and the statement. In this video, we'll cover how to answer two-part questions, how to make a plan and come up with a response, how to write your answer, and how to avoid making mistakes. If you follow these steps, you'll be able to write a good answer that fully and effectively answers both parts of the question. I should remind you that we've already covered how to develop ideas, as well as how to create coherence and cohesion in writing in the previous units. So if you need help with those, please go to our channel and watch the previous videos of Stage 3. And to make sure you have access to our future videos, please subscribe to our channel on YouTube. You might be asked a variety of question types in double question writing tasks. Some questions might require you to write about solutions to a problem. For example, what are some solutions to reduce plastic waste in our oceans? Some questions might need you to describe the effects of something, like in this question where it is asking the effects of this style of parenting. Some may require you to explain the reasons of something. For example, why do some people work harder? And some others might simply ask you your opinion about something. For example, do you think the arts still have a place amongst our modern lifestyles? No matter what kind of question you're asked, always remember that you have to understand and answer both questions fully. If you answer only one of them or focus more on one of the questions, you will lose marks in task response. Okay, let me first show you how your whole essay will look. This is the plan as a whole. You have to start with the introduction, of course. In the introduction, you need to show the examiner that you know what the problem is by paraphrasing the statement in the prompt question. Then you need to answer the question directly, which is your thesis statement. Finally, you need to tell the examiner how you're going to answer the question, which means you need to mention the main points of your reasoning. Then you'll have to write the first paragraph of your body. The first sentence of your body paragraph needs to be a good topic sentence. The answer to the first question would be the right topic sentence. Then you'll have to explain and give an example to back up the topic sentence. If you can't think of a good example, remember that you can add more information. Then you'll have to write your second body paragraph, which will also begin with a topic sentence. The answer to the second question is, of course, the topic sentence. Then, just like in the first body paragraph, you will have to write some sentences that back up your main idea. Then you will have to write the concluding paragraph. The concluding paragraph is basically a rephrased introduction. For the concluding paragraph, you just need to paraphrase the thesis statement, or you just need to answer the prompt questions again and give a summary of the main points that you covered. Now that you know what you're going to do as a whole, let's figure out how we're going to answer the prompt questions. When we have the answers to our prompt questions, then we can start writing the introduction. To achieve a high score in IELTS Writing Task 2, it is critical to fully understand the question prompt. So before you begin writing your response, you must carefully read and analyze the question prompt. In other words, make sure you understand what you're being asked to write about. A lot of times, students don't fully understand one part of the question, and as a result, they give the wrong answer and automatically get marked down to maybe a 5 and sometimes even a 4 in their task response, which drags down the other scores as well, resulting in a very low score. So let's look at this prompt question. Now, to analyze this question, first you need to find the topic words. In this case, these are the topic words in the main statement of the question prompt. Parents, children, raise. Then look for the keywords in the question. Here are the keywords. And finally, find the instruction words. Here are the instruction words in this topic. Is this a good way? And what consequences could this style of parenting have? To generate ideas, I first need to have the complete question in front of me. This is the first question I have to answer. This here is referring to this statement, so I'm going to paraphrase this statement to fit it into my question. Looking at this statement, I would say that parents who buy their children whatever they ask for are permissive parents, and if they allow their children to do whatever they want, they're actually spoiling their children. So from the topic, I can say, some parents are too permissive and they spoil their children. Now I can replace this paraphrase with this and change my question this way. Is being too permissive and spoiling children a good way to raise children? And I would also change my second question so that it would cover all the keywords and still look easy to answer. So I would say, if children are brought up this way, what consequences will it have in their adulthood? So now that we know what we should write about, we should think of ideas and decide which ideas to include in our writing. Since the first question is a yes-no question, we should first decide if our answer is a yes or a no. Then we can come up with some ideas to back it up. You could also think of ideas first and then decide if yes or no is the right answer. My answer to the first question is no, so I've come up with these ideas. Now that we have come up with the ideas, we should immediately put the ideas into our outline and then think of relevant explanations and examples. Our first question is whether this is a good way to raise children or not. In our topic sentence, we have to answer the first question. So I'm going to put down being permissive is not okay because children will think all their desires will be met. And I will also put in my second reason, which is they will not learn discipline. As an explanation for the desires to be met, I can say all desires cannot be met because of obstacles in life. Then I would need an example. I can say the desire to live in a modern house, but they may not be able to afford one. And for the explanation for the discipline part, I can just simply say discipline is doing what you should do even if you don't want to. Then for an example, I can say a child without discipline may choose not to do his homework. Remember, when you're planning your essay and writing your outline, have the rewarded question in front of you to make sure you're directly answering them. So here is the second question. If children are brought up this way, what consequences will it have in their adulthood? And the consequences could be personal and social. How? For example, there may be a lack of patience and a lack of self-control. And they may have social consequences as well by becoming lonely and unable to keep a good job. Now, I have to put this into the outline. Okay, now that we have generated ideas and we know what answers we want to give to the prompt questions, we can go back and look at our mind map again to put in our ideas. In body paragraph 2, we first have to take care of the topic sentence, which is the answer to the second question. So I'm going to put down, if children are brought up this way, they will face personal and social consequences in their adult life. For the first explanation, I have to talk about personal consequences, which are lack of patience and lack of self-control. As an example, I can say a child who throws a tantrum when he does not get his favorite toy right away. Now I have to explain the social consequences. So in the second explanation, I'm going to say social consequences, including becoming lonely and not being able to keep or get a job. For becoming lonely, I can say, for example, a pampered adult may have few friends because he always wants to do things his way and does not care about what others want. And I need another example for the adult who loses his job. So example 3 would be, a pampered adult may lose his job because he does not show up on time or finish his tasks. He may also complain or argue with his boss or coworkers when they give him feedback or suggestions. It's important to plan your approach before you start writing your answer. Again, your thoughts and ideas will be easier to organize if you make an outline or a mind map. You can use your outline to plan the main points of each paragraph and write topic sentences that answer the question well. All right, let's start with the introduction. Step 1 is simple. You only need to rewrite the sentence in the prompt. Let's take a look at the sentence. So here's the sentence, and this is how I have paraphrased it. Here, I thought I would start the introduction by answering the first question, which asks if this is a good way to raise kids. I will start by saying that some parents don't raise their kids well, by mistakenly doing what they ask for and blah, blah, blah. Here, I have directly answered the first question. As I explained in the previous videos, you might decide to combine the paraphrased statement and the thesis statement if you see fit. Notice how I have also answered the first question in this sentence. The first question is this being too permissive and spoiling children a good way to bring up children? And this phrase, fail to bring up their children well, indicates that my answer is no. So I have the rephrased statement now. The next step is to write a strong thesis statement which answers the questions in the prompt and lists the main points I'm going to discuss in the body paragraphs. Since I've already answered the first question, I just need to include the answer to the second one here. The second question is, if children are brought up this way, what consequences will it have in their adulthood? And this is how I am going to answer it. This poor method of upbringing could have harmful long-term effects on children's personal as well as social lives later in life. As you can see, I have also outlined the main points I'm going to discuss later in my thesis statement. Let's put these together to form our introduction. Note that I have decided to add a sentence at the beginning to make my introduction make more sense. So here's the introduction. Please pause your video, read the introduction, and then play your video again. Now, let's move on to write the first body paragraph. In this paragraph, I should explain why permissive parenting is not a good idea. So let's look at our outline and put everything together. So this is the paragraph I have written. Notice the topic sentence, main points, explanations, and examples I have included. Keep in mind that you need to be extra careful when you write your topic sentence. The topic sentence indicates what the whole paragraph is going to be about, and the sentences following the topic sentence will support the topic sentence and not give any additional ideas. Now let's answer the second question in the next body paragraph. Again, we just need to put everything together in the outline. And here's our second body paragraph. Again, pay attention to the way I have developed my topic sentence by adding the main points and explanations. All right, the hard part is over. All we have to do now is add a conclusion, which is the easiest part since you just need to rephrase the introduction by repeating your thesis statement and summarizing the main points. Let's look at the introduction again. So here's the introduction, and this is how I have paraphrased it to write my conclusion. That's it. Our essay is complete. Once again, I need to point out that there are some typical mistakes to avoid when writing two-part questions essay. Some students do not handle all portions of the question equally and lose marks as a result. Some fail to remain on topic and end up debating unrelated topics. To avoid making these mistakes, carefully study the topic, plan your response, and be sure to address both sections of the question in your response. To better understand the possible mistakes you might make when writing this type of essays, and to learn how to avoid such mistakes, let's take a look at an essay written by one of our students. Now, please pause your video, read this essay completely, and then play your video again. Let's begin with the introduction. In this paragraph, the student is only saying that there are different ways parents raise their children depending on their lifestyle and culture. Parents are either strict or easygoing, and those who are not strict allow their kids do whatever they want. Instead, in the introduction, the writer was only supposed to paraphrase the essay prompt and then give a thesis statement by answering the prompt questions, which did not happen here. So to rewrite an introduction for this essay, I had to read the body paragraphs to see what main points the student talks about so that I would include them in my introduction. The introduction could have been written like this. Some parents buy their children whatever they want and let them do whatever they want. This is not a healthy approach to raise children, since complete freedom can have consequences, like not teaching them to save money, leading them to harmful activities, and spoiling them. All right, before we move on to the body paragraph, let's see how this introduction was rewritten according to our outline. So here is the paraphrased statement. This is not a healthy approach is the answer to the first question, and since complete freedom can have consequences is the answer to the second question, so our thesis statement is complete. And like not teaching them to save money, leading them to harmful activities, and spoiling them are the main points that we're going to discuss in the body paragraphs. So let's look at the first body paragraph now. In body paragraph 1, the topic sentence says that it is not a good way to raise children, and it is not also logical not to limit them to buy and do any things they want because they're not experienced enough to manage their needs and demands. First of all, for better cohesion, the writer could have started by saying that being a permissive parent is not a good way to raise kids because blah, blah, blah. With this topic sentence, for the rest of this paragraph, I expect to read about why it is not good to be a permissive parent and how children are not able to make their own decisions. But immediately after the topic sentence, there is an opposing idea saying it is possible to meet children's needs and wants, but they need to be able to handle it well. The next sentence, if parents buy children and let them do any things, they will get used to buying unnecessary stuff and doing inappropriate activities during their childhood. This supports the topic sentence, saying what happens with permissive parents. But the writer needs to explain what he or she means here by inappropriate activities. The next sentence is a new idea saying that parenting is not just about giving children what they want. It is about showing generosity and kindness. The writer is not fully supporting the topic sentence. There are irrelevant sentences and different ideas come up without being explained or any examples given to clarify them. It even continues here to the point where there is an idea of having financial problems by getting into debts. Look at this. These kinds of parents would run into many problems, such as not being able to handle their children's behavior and getting into debt due to too much shopping. If you have an outline before you start writing, and if for every idea you add or anything you explain, you first read the question to make sure you're speaking relevantly, then you'll be able to write an essay with a good task response score. If we were to rewrite this paragraph, we would first need a better topic sentence that 1, answers the question in the prompt directly, and 2, is easy to explain and support. Let's see how this paragraph could be rewritten. The topic sentence is the most important sentence in a paragraph. The topic sentence is too specific because it goes into too much detail. Look at this. In my opinion, it is not a good way to raise children, and it is not also logical not to limit them to buy and do any things they want because they are not experienced enough to manage their needs and demands. The topic sentence can be changed to something more general that answers the question. This is how this paragraph could be written. Here, we have only rearranged the student's writing, and we have tried not to add or drop any ideas. In the topic sentence, the student has answered the question and given a reason by saying children are not experienced for managing their needs. This means the rest of the paragraph must only focus on how they are not experienced to manage their needs. What we did was to separate this reason from the topic sentence. So for the topic sentence, we only said it's not a good idea to let kids buy and do whatever they want. For this topic sentence, you can now bring different reasons. So what we did was we mentioned the reason of not being experienced as our second sentence as an explanation for the topic sentence. So we said, this is because kids don't have enough life experience or knowledge to take care of their own needs and wants. For the rest of the paragraph, let's see how we change the student's writing to support our topic sentence and make sense at the same time. So this sentence was changed to, even though it might seem fair to meet all of their needs, doing so without limits can cause problems. This sentence seemed to make a good example. And this one is restating the previous one. So I put them both together and said, for example, if parents let their kids shop and do other things whenever they want, the kids might get into bad habits and not be able to control their urges. For this part of the student's essay, I deleted these in red and only used these ideas. It shows parents' generosity and kindness, and not being able to handle their children's behavior. This is how I wrote the sentences again. It's important for parents to be kind and generous with their kids, but this shouldn't come at the cost of their getting spoiled. The second body paragraph answers the second question of the prompt. What consequences could this style of parenting or permissive parenting have for children as they get older? The topic sentence here has a cohesion problem. These children is a little vague as to which children we're talking about. The topic sentence should support the thesis statement, which means it should answer the question in the prompt, and it is usually best to give direct answers. Let's see how we changed the topic sentence first, and then how it was supported. In this sentence, the student is naming the main points, which are the consequences of being permissive parents. The student has mentioned not being good with money, doing something which is harmful for their health, and being rebellious and spoiled as his main points. So now we expect the student to explain each main point and give an example. In this sentence, the student says if they behave like this, they would not be able to handle their living costs and will have financial problems. This is the explanation of this first main point, which has not been written very clearly, because this part, for example, does not make much sense. Then in this sentence, the student says they will not take responsibilities when they get older because they always got what they wanted. This having no responsibility seems to be a new idea and does not support how it would lead to children having no fear and doing things that harm them. Then in this sentence, the student says if children do what they want, they will have no fear in doing anything in the future, and that would harm them. Maybe an example could have better explained this reasoning, which is trying to support this idea. The student doesn't mention anything about the last main point, which is being rebellious and spoiled. Even if the student was trying to support this main point by saying they will not take responsibilities, he or she was obviously not very successful. If you don't expand your main points, you will lose marks in task response. It would have been a better idea if the student only mentioned 2 main points and explained them fully. In this revised body paragraph, I'm going to make my topic sentence here a little more clear. And then I want to try to explain only 2 of the main points with more than 1 sentence or maybe an example. So for every main point, I have given an explanation or 2 or an example to be able to prove each point logically. Here is the first main point. It's explanation in 2 sentences, including an example. And the second main point, it's explanation and an example to make it clear. Please pause your video, read this paragraph carefully to see how this was done, and then play your video again. And lastly, let's read the conclusion. This is the conclusion that the student has written. Please pause your video, take a look at the conclusion, and then play your video again. This paragraph says here how important raising children is. Then in here, it says how their activities should be balanced. And then here, it says how a lack of balance could cause difficulty. We're not supposed to introduce new ideas in the conclusion. In the conclusion, we are only supposed to paraphrase the thesis statement. And as you know, the thesis statement is the answer to the 2 questions. So we were only supposed to repeat the answers to the questions and then give a summary of the main points that we covered. That's all. So this is how the concluding paragraph can change. In conclusion, I think that parents should not spoil their children by giving them everything they want and allowing them to do anything they want. This is because this parenting style can harm children's future prospects by making them financially irresponsible and unhealthy. Children who grow up without limits may not learn how to save money, work hard, or take care of their health. As you can see, this sentence here is the answer to the first question. And this sentence here is the answer to the second question. This final sentence is a summary of the main points that we covered. So we have a paraphrase of the thesis statement and a summary of the main points. Now let's put it all together. Please pause your video, read this, and play your video again. Finally, writing a 2-part question essay can be scary, but by using a few easy tactics, you can write a well-structured response that fits all of the requirements of the question. Remember to carefully consider the prompt, plan your response, and keep on the topic while answering both sides of the question equally. You may create a solid response that will give you a high mark on the IELTS Writing Task 2 if you follow these instructions. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more useful IELTS writing advice and tools.